I'm Danielle Genovese, and this is Conversations with Honor Bowman. Honor Bowman is a senior here at Loyola University, but most recently, she was actually an employee of Rainn, which is a National Sexual Assault Hotline and also considered one of America's top 100 charities by Worth magazine.
I found Rainn just stumbling upon it, and it looked so interesting, and I didn't know if I would get the internship because there's a couple different rounds, I guess, of interviewing. But when I found out, I was so happy, and I called my mom, and it was amazing, and it was probably the best experiences I've had in a while. So at Rainn, I had two. One was the online hotline part of it, when I was trained to go on the computers, and it was an anonymous service. So people would, it was almost set up like an AIM messenger. So I had a username, and they were anonymous every time, and I couldn't ask them their name, how old they were, any information. It was what they provided me. And I was basically, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not licensed to be a therapist, but I was there for empathy and to listen. And through training, through Rainn, I was able to get them resources to take the next healthy steps, to be there. I had a couple of suicidal cases, many suicidal cases, and I was there for them, and it was incredible what the stories that people were telling me, and they were all victims of rape in one form or another. It didn't matter the gender, their sexual identity, orientation. We welcomed any visitor, and granted, I didn't know who I was talking to, but then you would hear a line from them that said, like, "You're the first person who's heard me today. You're the first person who's listened to me." And I would have days when I would sit in front of the computer and just cry. But then you would get that one person who just said thank you. And that kind of drove me to keep coming back every day. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the problem that a lot of, like, specifically colleges have is they don't want their numbers to be higher than they are for the number of attacks, reports, anything like that on their campus, because they want students to come. They want students to invest. So it's hard, and it's ugly, and sadly, a lot of the problem is that victims, when they report, nothing's done. And they, in turn, will internalize that reaction based off of someone who's supposed to be an authority figure, who's supposed to be helping them. And they'll say to themselves, it doesn't matter after all, which is probably the worst thing that can happen to a victim. But I think just this continuous conversation of talking about the right facts and just continuing open discussions in classrooms and not being afraid to talk about it would definitely change the way that people look at it and change the way people react to this type of thing on campus. It's really hard. It's because I think with my issue is because I was working, I worked like 3 months at Rainn. I was taking so many different visitors a day, like with different stories, that it became personal for me. Like, again, they were all anonymous, but you would sometimes have returning visitors, and you could kind of tell by what story they would tell you or the way they would type, and it's heartbreaking. And to hear about authority figures that don't take it seriously, that are more worried about their image than the safety and well-being of the individual, the victim, I think it's horrible, and it's hard, and I say it's hard for me, but then I can't imagine how it would be for the actual person who's asking for help, begging for help, and it's not given. And then in turn, that almost deters other people from voicing and speaking out as well. So then it just gets to this negative cycle of not speaking out, and seeing what that does and hearing how that affects some people who do keep it in, it damages them, and it really hinders their way of life and can lead down other roads that are just as unhealthy. I think the biggest thing is that it needs to be addressed, and it's one of those topics that people don't like talking about. And it's almost like you hear the word rape and your voice almost goes down in octaves, because it's not a fun topic, but it's a topic that needs to be heard. And what I took away from it was just reiterating the fact that what I want to be is a voice for people who don't have theirs yet, and to encourage them to have their voice, to speak up. I think it's awesome. Like it's so many times you get these calls in and out. We have calls, we have the hotline, and sometimes it's like you forget that you're doing something good, in the sense that it drains you. But then it's like if you take a step back and you're looking at the good work that's doing, it's so worth it. And it's like you might be impacting someone, but then in turn, that person could impact someone else positively and shape the way someone else looks at life. And so it's like you're creating this positive domino effect. And I don't know, it's like the fact that number is so high is amazing. And it's like these people who work at Rainn, it's a 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline. And, it's like we get most of our calls from midnight to 4 a.m., and it's like all the interns, we had to dedicate one night shift to being that shift. And, it's hard. It's like I remember being like, drinking coffee at like 11:30 at night, like gearing up to do my shift. But then after my shift, I would think about the people I've talked to and the stories that I've heard. And that you impacted someone, and maybe you didn't have a big impact, but you helped them a little bit. And it's that little bit of help that will carry them to the next day and, make it possible for them to get out of bed and continue on, and encourage them to get the resources and help that they need. So the people that work at Rainn, they're amazing individuals, so selfless, and I feel very grateful to have the supervisors I've had and the boss that I had, because they changed the way I looked at other people. I think that the most important thing is, like, if one of your friends is saying something, don't write it off as being, oh, that's just him being, frustrated with the day, or he's just overtired, or she's just, whatever, cranky, she's not herself. Listen to the signs, because I think that one of the worst things you can do is write off someone who's asking for help. And because in their heads, then they kind of look at the situation that, oh, maybe I'm overreacting. And then it might not lead to something such as the, rape or the issues that I was dealing with, but it could. And I think just being aware and understanding too, and just being a compassionate, good friend is the best you can do, especially if you're not trained. It's just being someone to listen is really, really important.